Hey guys, this is WhytManga here with a new video on how to use reference. Heads up guys, this video is sponsored by Graphic Stock. Graphic Stock basically are the largest unlimited download library of like graphic, photos, vectors, and images on the internet. So you can find a lot of stuff on Graphic Stock. They basically have over 300,000 graphics, photos, vectors, and images. So there's a lot to choose from, and they have like a really cool search option so where you can literally type in and find whatever you're looking for. As you guys know, reference is really helpful when you're practicing, you're trying to learn how to draw a certain thing and in a certain way, depending on whatever image or illustration you're using as reference or using as inspiration. For me, back in the day, which is not too long ago, honestly, where I maybe be watching a TV show. If it's on my laptop, I take like a screenshot of a certain scene because I like how the camera angle is. I like, whatever I like about it, where I just take a shot of it and I use that as reference. And those things kind of get like really difficult because you kind of lose a lot of crisp, when you screenshot an image. Sometimes it might not be high def and stuff like that. Or sometimes I use Google Images, where I just search directly and use Google Images and see if I can find whatever I'm looking for. But the problem is that sometimes, again, it's not high res, it's not sharp enough, so there'll be things that'll be a little blurry. You wouldn't really know what's going on in that region of the image or illustration or whatever it is. So if you don't have access to these images, it's kind of really difficult to use them as reference. Another great source of reference is to kind of go out in the wild, in life, and get inspiration from real things being there in person. But sometimes you can't. Like if I wanted to draw the Eiffel Tower, now I'm not gonna go to France. You know what I mean? So depending on what you want to do, these things become more difficult, and even sometimes difficult in another sense where it might even be illegal to use references if you don't have permission. Most times if you wanted to draw something, you need permission. And let's say if it's like a photo reference, to use that photo, depending on how you use the photo, you kind of need permission from the owner of the photo. That's why sometimes if you want to draw like a portrait commissions, obviously if it's a portrait commission, so you would be given permission to use like their actual photos to draw their portraits, or a family photo, whatever it is. And if you don't have that permission, you can get into like some illegal nonsense. So basically, one of the best ways would be for you to take photos yourself with your own camera, because that way you own the photos. You don't need to get permission from anybody else. Or lastly, you can go to other sites and pay for the images, pay for the rights for these images. Even on Google, even if you use Google Images, you would get access to these to whatever photos you want to use as reference, but they would have like watermarks on them, and they wouldn't be. Some of them might be blocking what you want to draw, and it might look weird if you want to attach it to a video. And if you, let's say, as a content creator myself for YouTube, I can't, if I don't have permission to use these photos, I can't like put them in a video, legally. Maybe nothing will happen, but legally, you never know. Things get crazy, and it's kind of illegal. Things can get crazy. Anyways. The problem is that most websites charge images or graphics and stuff like that, and they charge up to like $30 per image. So if you wanted to get reference from like an illustration or an image or a photo or whatever, if you wanted to have access to like several of them, you'd have to get permission for all of them, which is $30 times however many you actually want, and that's a lot of money. That's where Graphic Stock comes in. So rather than paying like $30 per image, or around $30 per image, because some are even more, you can get access to all of Graphic Stock's unlimited library for $99 for a whole year, which is like over 300,000 images and and graphics and all of that for a whole year. Now I know what you guys are thinking, and still maybe to some of you, maybe that's still a lot of money. But this is the WhytManga channel, and we got you guys some free stuff, partnering up with Graphic Stock. And if you watch till the end of this video, I will give you guys, tell you guys a way to get a 7-day free trial And during that 7-day free trial, you'll be able to download 140 pieces of content free. And this is because all memberships come with a 100% royalty-free agreement. This means that you can't get sued by copyright holders for the use, and you can use this content in your commercial projects, i.e. you can use them for reference one, or you can put them in your, if you make videos, you can put them in your videos, you can put them in your movies, maybe use it as a poster, or you're going to edit it, alter it, and maybe change something into an ad or whatever. Basically, you would kind of have rights to that image. So, reference, guys. There are many ways you can use reference, really. As you can see, this is one way I'm using in this very video, drawing the boxer sitting down in the corner. The image that I'm using as reference is also an image from graphic stock, so you're actively seeing me, giving you guys a live, well, not exactly live, but an example of me using an image for reference. Now, there's several ways to use reference, right? You could be drawing however you got the reference to begin with, and you could be drawing something exactly as you see it, 100%, like basically copying it, or you could be taking certain things, or maybe the essence of the drawing, or maybe just a pose, or maybe it's a background or something like that. You could just be taking something, however, to whatever degree from that image, and putting it into your drawing while adding maybe your style, your flair, changing little things here and there. But basically using that drawing as reference. Now, a simple example would be to say, see a drawing, a character in a pose, and then you are all you want from that image, all you want from that image is the actual anatomy of things. Maybe you also want the anatomy from a certain perspective as well, so you're getting it from the perspective you want, and your main focus, what you're actually copying, is the pose itself, and maybe not the person, maybe nothing else. And once you have that pose down, then you go in and you tweak things and you turn it into your character. This is actually done a whole lot when it comes to rotoscoping for animation, or just in animation in general, where even for some Disney 3D or just 3D movies in general, where some of the animators would actually film themselves. So this is maybe not photo reference, but this is also a form of reference where they film themselves and they do an action, and maybe they just act and say a couple words, just to get that emotion, get that movement, and they find ways to translate that into their animated films. Now, for the drawing you see in front of you here, I'm only taking, now I could have drawn this myself anyways, but I'm just trying to show you guys, and because the whole idea of using reference is also part of videos I've done before that focus on how you can improve as an artist and improve your skill, how to practice, the actual act of doing so, and I think this helps a little bit. So in this video, I'm focusing on his pose, him sitting down in the corner and his hands resting in the the middle ropes, right? And I'm going to be taking a little more than that, so the character that I'm drawing is going to be a boxer as well. I'm taking a lot of it, but I'm going to change something. Maybe I don't like the way his head is tilted, or maybe it's not that I don't like it, or it's just that I don't need it. And maybe my character is in a scene where he's actually focusing on his opponent, and he's pissed, he's in the zone. Maybe not pissed, but he's in the zone, and maybe that was round 1 or round 2 just ended or something like that. So this is like maybe a mid-fight scene kind of thing, and I want to capture that, and I don't want to, and maybe I don't want the character to be looking at the side, maybe to his coach or anything. I want him to be focused on his opponent. So I'm going to change the head region of things and draw it however I want. I'm also not going to, my focus again is on the posture and the camera angle in this, at least for this example. So I'm not trying to draw it exactly. I'm not trying to draw it realistically as one would do in a different scenario for using a photo as reference. Here I'm going to, so at the end of the day, I'm just focusing on the anatomy and the perspective from which is drawn. So you will still see my raw style when I'm drawing you know, maybe things that are slightly more cartoony. I believe my style is a little more realistic than most anime manga styles, at least in my opinion. But you will still see that style. It's not. I'm not going for a really realistic style here. And also, I'm kind of challenging myself with this drawing because I'm not using pencils. Therefore, I cannot erase. So, you know, you don't have to be like me. It's okay to erase. One of the things that's great when you're using reference, one of the things that tips that I can give is, you know, once in a while kind of step back and look at both of them and make sure everything is in the right everything is in its right place, basically. That's a good Radiohead song, by the way. And don't be afraid to erase. Eraser, another good Radiohead. Well, I guess it's not Radiohead. That was that's just a Tom York. So I'm getting sidetracked. I get sidetracked once in a while. I apologize. But point is, you know, feel free to use pencils and erase and make sure everything works. One method that people use when they're using reference, maybe they want to draw a portrait or whatever kind of portrait, drawing something from life, where they can actually use like a grid technique. And in a grid technique, it has to do with like ratios of things, where you take an image and you kind of break that image into little squares and, you know, form like a grid with that image. And if that grid for that image was like, say, 16 boxes, 16 little boxes forming that grid over the image, then you have your paper where you break into 16 boxes as well, and then you draw those boxes individually, right? It's much easier, and, you know, there's less room for error that way. And there are lots of artists that do that as well. So you're focusing on each little box. So if you were drawing a face and you broke that, you kind of formed a grid on your reference photo, and you focused on each box. Each box could be like, it's easier to draw each box than to draw the photo all at once. Sometimes the box, you could just be focusing on one line. And once you know how to box, then everything, all the lines kind of come together. The grid makes it easier for you to see. Again, it's less room for error. And maybe in a future video, I'll have a tutorial on using that grid technique specifically. Now, that's not for everybody. Some artists don't use it. So that's something to keep in mind. And sometimes when drawing, you may not only be referencing referencing the photo itself. You could also be referencing how the photo was created, if it's a natural photo, how it was, you know, taken, what filters and all of that. And maybe you're focusing mainly on the filters, and that's really all you want from it. Or again, it could be, maybe it's a drawing, maybe you're referencing a comic book page, and maybe your focus is on the technique that was used to create that page or create the artwork. But most times, in my experience, anytime someone's looking for references, usually them taking something from the image itself, whatever it be, say how certain things were drawn, or anatomy, or, you know, the perspective, the dynamic angle of this fight scene and how it's captured, the essence of the fight scene, kind of studying the image and taking little things here and there and applying it to your own work while adding your own stuff over it. Sometimes, you know, the idea of reference kind of blurs into getting inspiration and influence. I think there are slight differences, but they're all within the same realm. Another tip I'll add to learning how to use reference, I guess, more accurately, would be to study on your own without it. Like, still learn how to draw, like, on your own. Kind of know the foundations, know the rules, practice a lot. And for instance, you would understand the anatomy of, say, the reference you're using a whole lot more if you understand anatomy in general. You're not exempt from studying art just because you're using reference. Now, you know, once in a while you might actually get it really close to in a scenario where you're drawing it exactly, but say if you already knew the foundation of the rules before you attempted to break them, you would be a little freer. You kind of, especially if, say, you're using another artist's work as reference, you you would kind of be able to almost put yourself in that artist's shoes in certain scenarios, and in a way figure out the decisions the artist made while creating that that work of art that you're using as reference, without actually knowing the artist or anything like that. You might be wrong, but trust me, 9 times out of 10, you're right. You'd be able to figure out, you almost be able to think like the artist who created the photo you're using as reference. So basically, knowing how to draw, basically I'm saying knowing how to draw already helps, obviously. But, as you keep on actively practicing, especially using anatomy as an example, say if you're drawing an image and like trying to draw that, take out the anatomy from that reference, that's the basic thing you want from it. If you kind of have a good understanding of anatomy in general, it'll be easier for you to use the photo as reference. So I think the first major thing is you figuring out how you want to use the reference photo, what you're using it for, and what you want from it. So I mean, even some artists that get commissioned to draw self-portraits, or not commissioned to draw portraits in general, I'm sorry, they may draw the they may get the actual, basically what they're taking from it is certain things and maybe facial features that make that person, make Lil Jimmy look like Lil Jimmy, but then they add their flair of the drawing process, or how it's being painted, or the digital techniques thrown in there, little filters there that it might even take Lil Jimmy and put him in some kind of weird realm, or in a weird background. Say the photo was taken in front of a house, but then the artist kind of takes that and maybe puts him in front of a spaceship. So even in some portraits, they still play around with it. But do you want to draw it exactly as is? Are you taking certain things from it, and how are you going to kind of translate that into your own style? And these are things that take practice and time, and once you kind of do it over and over again, well, at least what I do, so sometimes when I'm trying to learn to draw a character, maybe a character face from a certain angle, or a body pose from a certain angle, what I do is, at least what I used to do, because I don't do it that much anymore, but you wouldn't do it as much anymore, and that's what I'm getting to, is when you kind of do it over and over again, you kind of wouldn't need the reference. The more you do it, the less you need the reference. So there are cases where you use reference just so you don't use it again. It also helps your speed. Another thing I'll say is, some people kind of look down upon reference and the idea of being able to draw something off the top. While that's impressive, I think the end result is always much more valuable. So never be afraid of using reference, and never be afraid to erase, go back, look at it all over again, keep looking at it, look for your mistakes, erase them, fix them. The same thing applies to everything you do. So these are, I'm kind of like echoing some of the same things that I've said before in my how to practice, or how to improve your art skill, which are also videos that I recommend you check out. So yeah, that's it guys. That's all I have for you guys for now. If there are things or questions you have regarding reference, maybe in some specific areas that you want me to answer, you can leave your questions in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer them. So now, for the free trial, a little free, a lot of people like free stuff. To get that, all you need to do is go to graphicstock.com/YouTube, or click the link in the description below to get your exclusive 7-day free trial to Graphic Stock. Please don't forget to like this video. Again, leave a comment if you have any questions. Subscribe to the channel for more. And for those who don't know me, I am WhytManga. I'm the creator of Apple Black. Apple Black, you can read the first 4 chapters free for Apple Black in the links below. Or you can purchase Apple Black Volume 1 with the first 9 chapters. Apple Black Volume 2 is set to be released late December. So y'all can stay tuned for that. Wish me luck, because I'm still working on it. I apologize to most of y'all, because this month has been a little rocky. I've not been as active as I usually am on this YouTube channel. But y'all should stay tuned for that, because that's all going to change really soon. I have a couple collaborations coming up as well, and other cool stuff that's going to hit the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys for staying till the end. I really appreciate it. This is WhytManga, and I'm outie.